I watched my husband laugh on vacation while I lay half paralyzed in a Texas hospital bed. That was the moment I decided, if he could leave me for dead, I could bury him in silence. The sound of the monitor was steady, almost soothing, beep, 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 a rhythm that mocked her heartbeat. Jessica Hale stared at the ceiling of St. David's Hospital in Austin, counting each pulse as proof she was still here. Alive. Breathing. Waiting. A tray of untouched Jell-O sat on the bedside table, trembling with every movement of the air vent. The TV played some mindless afternoon talk show, but she wasn't listening. Her phone buzzed beside her pillow. She turned her head slowly, every motion felt like lifting weights, and saw Mark's name flashing across the screen. Her thumb hovered before unlocking it. A photograph filled the display, Mark, tanned and shirtless, holding a drink with a little paper umbrella. The caption read, "Finally some peace." Her body went cold. Not because of the fluid dripping into her veins, but because of what she understood in that instant. Her husband had gone on vacation while she lay in a hospital bed, unable to move half her body. She read the comments below the photo. "You deserve it, bro. Man's living the dream." Jessica closed her eyes. For a moment, the heart monitor spiked, the nurse rushed in, asked if she was in pain. Jessica shook her head. "No pain," she whispered, "just remembering something I forgot to forget." When the nurse left, Jessica looked out the window. Austin was buzzing below, cars honking, life moving, everything normal. But for her, something had ended. She thought about the years she'd spent keeping their house perfect, making excuses for his late nights, his business trips. She thought about how easily he smiled in that photo, as if she were already gone. The four hissed quietly. The air smelled like antiseptic and betrayal. Jessica pressed the call button. A soft voice crackled over the speaker. "Yes, Mrs. Hale?" "I need a notary," Jessica said evenly. "A notary?" "For my will." There was a pause, the kind that happens when people don't know if you're joking or serious. Jessica wasn't joking. She picked up her phone again, staring at the photo. Her reflection was faint on the glass, pale skin, tired eyes, messy hair. For the first time, she didn't hate what she saw. She saw survival. And something colder, precision. "I'm not dying here," she said quietly. "Not like this. Not as his forgotten wife." She turned the phone face down and watched the light flicker through the blinds, stripes of gold and shadow across her face. In that fading light, Jessica Hale stopped being a patient. She became a storm, waiting for silence to end. The next morning, the Texas sky was the color of steel. Rain tapped softly against the window, a rhythm that blended with the monitor's beeping. Jessica sat upright for the first time in a week, her hair brushed, her gown replaced by a simple gray sweatshirt. She looked less like a patient and more like a woman waiting for a meeting. When the nurse entered with her meds, Jessica's tone was gentle but firm. "Could you bring me a landline phone, please? I need to make an official call." The nurse hesitated, glancing at the chart. "A personal call?" "A legal one," Jessica said. Minutes later, Jessica dialed a number from memory, her father's old attorney in Dallas. The line crackled. "Ms. Hale," came the voice, surprised. "How are you feeling?" "Recovering. And revising a few life choices." "You sound determined." "I need a notary and someone who won't ask questions." "Can you send one to St. David's Hospital today?" A pause. "You know that means." "Yes. It means I'm done pretending my husband still cares." When she hung up, the silence in the room felt alive. Jessica exhaled slowly, watching her breath fog against the glass. Outside, the rain turned heavier, streaking the skyline. Each drop felt like punctuation, an ending to a sentence she never wanted to write. Her phone buzzed again. "Mark. A new message, hope you're not stressing. We'll be home next week." Attached was another photo, him laughing, arm around a woman Jessica didn't recognize. She studied that face. Blonde, younger, maybe a coworker. Her chest tightened, then steadied. So that's what peace looks like, she murmured. The door opened, and a tall woman in a navy coat stepped inside, holding a small briefcase. Mrs. Hale? I'm Evelyn Cross, the notary your lawyer requested. Jessica's lips curved into something between a smile and a scar. Perfect timing. Evelyn set out her papers, the scent of rain clinging to her coat. What will we be notarizing today? Jessica's eyes flicked to the photo still glowing on her phone. My husband believes he has power of attorney while I recover. We'll be revoking that. Evelyn nodded, professional but curious. And replacing it with? My own signature, Jessica said, picking up the pen with a slightly trembling hand. And a different future. Her handwriting was slow, deliberate, each letter pressed deep, almost carved into the page. She signed her name 3 times. The sound of the pen scratching paper felt louder than the rain. When the forms were sealed, Evelyn looked up. Do you want a witness copy for your husband? Jessica shook her head. He'll know soon enough. As the notary left, Jessica rested her head back against the pillow. For the first time since the stroke, her smile was real. Not happy, real. You wanted freedom, Mark, she whispered. So do I. The storm outside broke into thunder. In that echo, she felt her pulse align with the lightning, steady, powerful, reborn. The first signature of her revenge had just dried. 3 days later, the hospital's morning light spilled across Jessica's bed like cold glass. The rain had passed, leaving the city washed and shining. Nurses moved through the hallway with carts and clipped shoes, their chatter distant and harmless, unaware that one patient on the second floor had just detonated a silent bomb. Jessica was sitting up, cross-legged, laptop open on her knees. The 4 had been removed that morning. She typed slowly, deliberately, pausing between each sentence as if etching her new life into existence. Her email window was open, her bank's legal division, her attorney, the hospital's billing office, all copied on one quiet thread titled, Revocation of Power of Attorney, effective immediately. She reread the email twice, then clicked send. The whoosh of that sound felt like thunder in her chest. Her fingers trembled, not from weakness this time, but from adrenaline. For the first time in months, she wasn't reacting, she was acting. Her phone buzzed almost instantly. A call. The name, Mark Hale. Jessica stared at it for a moment. She let it ring out once, twice, 3 times, then answered on the 4th. Hey, his voice came, smooth as oil. Got your text. What's this about some paperwork? I can't log into the account. Her tone was calm, steady. That's correct. You no longer can. What? A pause, incredulous laughter. Jess, you're joking. You can't. I can. I did. She cut him off with the same precision he'd used to cut her out of their life. The bank and attorney have my updated signatures. You'll receive the notice this afternoon. You revoked me? While I'm trying to take care of everything? Jessica looked at the rain-dried skyline. You took care of yourself just fine. In Cancun. Silence. Then a bitter chuckle. This isn't you, Jess. You're emotional. You're right, she said softly. It isn't me. It's who you made me become. The line went dead. She imagined his face, that mix of arrogance and panic he wore whenever control slipped away. She didn't need to see it to know exactly what it looked like. She closed her phone, exhaled, and leaned back against the pillows. It wasn't satisfaction she felt. It was stability. The kind that comes after a long, brutal storm, when the world is still broken, but finally quiet. Minutes later, the hospital's financial officer called. They confirmed receipt of the new documents and said all decisions would now require Jessica's personal consent. The phrase felt almost ceremonial. Would you like us to inform your husband officially, Mrs. Hale? Jessica's lips curled. No. Let him find out the hard way. She stared at her reflection in the window, pale skin, dark circles, hair pulled back in a messy bun. She didn't look powerful. But she was. In her mind, she could already hear the tremor in Mark's voice when his credit card got declined, when the lawyer refused his access, when the life he thought he controlled began slipping through his fingers. And she didn't need to raise her voice, post a photo, or scream. All she had to do was sign her name and disappear. Outside, a helicopter passed over the Austin skyline, slicing through the quiet blue sky. Jessica watched its shadow glide across the window, thinking how fragile freedom looked when you didn't own it, and how dangerous it felt once you finally did. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Mark. Just 3 words. "We need to talk." Jessica typed back. "No. You need to listen." Then she turned the phone face down and smiled faintly. Revenge, she thought, wasn't about destruction. It was about control. And she had just taken it back. At 10 p.m. the Austin sky was violet, the air humming with crickets and highway noise. Inside a boutique resort in Cancun, Mark Hale slid a platinum card across a marble bar top and smiled at the blonde woman beside him. The bartender ran the card, frowned, tried again. "I'm sorry, sir, it's declined." Mark laughed. "Run it again." "It's a corporate limit, you're fine." The machine beeped the same sharp denial. "Declined." Twice. He stared at the tiny word on the display, unauthorized. Something in his chest tightened. He checked his phone. No service. He felt a flush crawl up his neck. "Excuse me," he muttered, grabbing the card and walking toward the lobby where the Wi-Fi was stronger. Behind him the woman called, "Everything okay?"
"Yeah,"
he said, forcing a grin. "Just a glitch." But as he opened his banking app, the grin cracked. Every account, every joint balance, every line of credit, locked. Frozen. A single notification sat at the top of the screen. Power of attorney revoked, account access terminated. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. Jessica. He remembered her last words before he left, "I'll be fine, Mark. Go." He had gone. And now, somehow, the woman who couldn't move her left arm had just taken his entire financial heartbeat offline. He dialed her number. Straight to voicemail. He texted, "Jess, what the hell did you do?" The dots appeared, then vanished. No reply. Mark paced the lobby, anger rising under the chill of the air conditioning. She wouldn't, she couldn't, he whispered. But she had. And every second he stared at that dead phone screen, a sliver of fear replaced his arrogance. Back in Texas, Jessica sat by the hospital window, phone in her lap, screen lit with his frantic messages. She didn't open them. The city lights glowed outside, amber, distant, merciless. She listened to the soft hum of monitors and felt her pulse matching their rhythm. A nurse stopped by with evening meds. "Everything all right, Mrs. Hale?" Jessica smiled. "Better than ever." When the nurse left, she opened Mark's last message and read it once. "Jess, please answer. I can't pay for the room. What are you doing?" Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then she typed, slowly. "Learning to live without you. Thought you'd appreciate the example." She didn't send it. Not yet. Instead, she saved it in drafts, her private confession of power. Revenge wasn't a shout, it was a whisper that echoed. She opened a new document on her laptop, Steps Toward Freedom. Bullet 1, transfer personal funds to new account. Bullet 2, change medical proxy. Bullet 3, book physical therapy under maiden name. Each line was a brick in the wall she was building between who she was and who she'd become. Outside, a nurse wheeled in another patient. Jessica watched the movement, the quiet efficiency, the way people rebuilt themselves in small motions. That's all she was doing, reconstruction. Her phone buzzed again. A final text from Mark. "I'm coming home." Jessica whispered to the window. "Then you'll arrive to a house that doesn't know your name." She closed the laptop and let the room fall into silence. The sound of the heart monitor steadied. The woman in the hospital bed was no longer a victim, she was an architect. Mark Hale's flight touched down in Austin just after dawn. The Texas heat was already rising, blurring the edges of the tarmac like a mirage. He'd spent the last 3 hours replaying the last few days, the frozen cards, unanswered calls, the humiliation of borrowing cash from the woman he'd been drinking with. Every mile home tightened around his chest like wire. By the time the taxi pulled into their cul-de-sac, his hands were shaking. The house looked smaller, darker. Curtains drawn. Mail piled on the porch. He stepped out, dragging his suitcase, trying to believe this was still his territory. The key turned, but the alarm chirped, a new tone. He froze. The security panel blinked red, access denied. Mark punched in his old code. Nothing. Then the alarm spoke, an automated voice colder than steel. Unauthorized entry. Police have been notified. He slammed the door shut again, heart hammering. A moment later, the alarm cut off, remotely disabled. His phone buzzed. Jessica Hale. You still think this house belongs to you? He stared at the message until the letters blurred. He typed back. We need to talk. No reply. Only the littly delivered icon, her silent way of saying I see you. He drove to the hospital. The receptionist recognized him immediately. Mr. Hale, your wife's expecting discharge paperwork today. She's in room 214. He felt a rush of relief. Maybe he could fix this, smooth it out. He rehearsed lines in his head as he walked the hallway. When he reached the door, she was already sitting up, dressed in jeans and a soft gray sweater, her hair brushed, her bag packed neatly on the chair. She looked whole. Different. Jess, he said, voice cracking with something between guilt and disbelief. You look good. She met his eyes. I am good. He smiled weakly. Listen, I know things look bad. The accounts, the house, I just need you to understand. I do understand, she interrupted, calm as a surgeon. You left me to die and went on vacation. I just returned the courtesy. He took a step closer. I was scared. I didn't know how to handle. You handled it fine. You posted it. Her voice didn't rise. That was the worst part, her serenity. He glanced at the nurse hovering near the door. Can we talk privately? Jessica nodded. Of course. She waved the nurse away. Then, softly. You know what's fascinating, Mark? When someone shows you who they are, the first time, believe them. You showed me. He tried to grab her hand. She pulled it away. You changed the locks. The bank, what are you doing? I'm surviving. She stood, slower than before but steady. And you? You're learning what that feels like. Mark's jaw clenched. You're making a mistake. Jessica slung her bag over her shoulder. Maybe. But it's mine to make. She brushed past him, the scent of antiseptic and rain following her. At the doorway she stopped, looked back just once. Next time you use the word we, make sure there's someone left who believes in it. Then she was gone. Mark stood in the empty room, surrounded by the soft beep of an abandoned monitor. Outside the window, a nurse wheeled away her old chart. The plastic tag still read patient, Jessica Hale. He stared at it until the letters faded in his vision. He'd thought he could live without her. Now he understood what silence really sounded like. The taxi rolled to a stop in front of the Hale residence just after noon. The Texas sun hung high, bleaching everything in sharp light, the driveway, the red brick porch, even the mailbox that still carried his last name. Jessica stepped out slowly. The warmth felt strange after weeks under fluorescent hospital bulbs. The air carried the faint scent of magnolia and cut grass. It should have felt like home. It didn't. She pulled her suitcase toward the front door, her door now, and slid the new key into the lock. A clean click. The sound of ownership. Inside, the air was stale and quiet. Dust floated in golden beams slicing through the blinds. The silence pressed close, heavy with memories. The house had always been too big for her laughter, too small for her loneliness. Her shoes tapped softly across the hard wood. Every step echoed differently now, no longer an echo of servitude, but of reclamation. She passed the framed photographs on the hallway wall. Smiling vacations, family holidays, those staged moments that used to mean something. She stopped at one, Mark holding her waist on their wedding day, both grinning like the world belonged to them. With a faint smile, she took the frame down, flipped it over, and slipped the photo out. Behind it, tucked neatly in the backing paper, was a small folded receipt, dated 2 months ago. A jewelry store. A purchase she'd never received. Her faint smile froze, then hardened. She opened the drawer beneath the entry table and found a half-empty bottle of his favorite cologne. The smell hit her like a ghost. For a long moment, she stood there, breathing it in, eyes glassy but dry. Then she whispered to the empty room. "I buried your loyalty right here." The house seemed to exhale. She walked into the kitchen. The counter still held a half-full jar of coffee, a mug left near the sink. Her reflection in the window was ghostly, hair tied back, eyes sharper, posture straight. She didn't look like the woman who once waited for him to come home. No, she looked like the woman who had finally come home herself. Jessica unpacked slowly, not with the urgency of arrival, but with ritual. Every folded shirt placed deliberately in drawers. Every book aligned on the shelf. She erased his clutter, reclaimed her rhythm. When she reached the bedroom, the bed was still unmade, his side dented deep. She ran her fingers over the sheet, then pulled it off entirely. The fabric landed in a heap, heavy with the scent of someone else's perfume. Her lips tightened. She stripped the mattress bare, replaced the covers with fresh white linens she'd ordered weeks ago, quietly, online, under her maiden name. As she tucked the corners, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You can't just erase me, Jess." She stared at it for a moment, then deleted it. No reply. Instead, she opened her camera, turned it toward herself, and snapped a photo, her standing by the clean bed, the sunlight cutting across her face. A new memory. A new beginning. She scrolled through her contacts and stopped at one, Dr. Lila Mendez, physical therapist. She hit call. "Jessica Hale," she said when the receptionist answered. "I'm ready to start walking again." Outside, a gust of wind pushed through the open window, carrying the faint chime of the neighbors' wind bells. It sounded like applause, quiet, distant, but real. She stood in the doorway of the bedroom, taking one last look. "Welcome home," she whispered to herself. For the first time in months, the house didn't feel empty. It felt hers. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the blinds and filled the bedroom with a false sense of peace. Jessica woke early, her body stiff but her mind alert. She'd always been the kind of woman who could sense when something in a room didn't belong. Today, that something was scent. It drifted from the closet, sweet, floral, expensive. Not hers. Not the soft vanilla she'd worn for years. This was sharp, synthetic, confident. A stranger's signature. Jessica opened the closet doors. A silk scarf fluttered from the top shelf and landed at her feet. Pale blue, perfumed. She lifted it, pressed the fabric to her nose, and exhaled slowly. "So," she murmured, "you didn't even hide her well." The hangers rattled as she moved through the clothes. His suits were still there, pressed and smug, the armor of a man who believed in permanence. Behind them, tucked between a garment bag and a spare blazer, she found a shoebox. Inside, a seashell, a cocktail napkin, and a small Polaroid of Mark laughing on the beach, that same blonde woman at his side. She stared at the picture until her hands stopped trembling. The woman's wrist wore the same pale blue scarf. Jessica placed the photo on the dresser and sat on the edge of the bed. Her heartbeat wasn't fast, it was deliberate. There was a time when she'd have cried, smashed something, begged for an explanation. That version of her was gone. Instead, she opened the bedside drawer and pulled out a small notebook labeled Reconstruction. She wrote a new line beneath her to-do list. Number 4, replace every trace of him. She started with the scent. Opening the windows wide, she let the Texas air rush in. It smelled like sun-baked cedar and freedom. She gathered his suits, his cologne, his golf trophies, every emblem of his certainty, and carried them downstairs. One by one, she dropped them into black garbage bags. The sound was soft but final. Outside, the garbage truck rumbled down the street. She dragged the first bag to the curb. The neighbor, Mrs. Whitaker, watering her garden, waved politely. Back home, dear? Feeling better? Jessica smiled. Much better. When she went back inside, the house felt lighter. Still haunted, but in her control. She walked into the kitchen, brewed a fresh pot of coffee, and stood at the window while it gurgled. The mirror over the sink reflected her face, paler, thinner, but no longer afraid. Her phone vibrated on the counter. An email notification, subject, statement dispute. Mark had already tried to reverse the bank transfer. The system flagged it as invalid. She almost laughed. She opened another window tab, real estate listings, Austin, Texas. It wasn't about running away, it was about choosing where to begin again. The scent still lingered faintly in the bedroom upstairs, but it no longer belonged to the other woman. It was now a reminder, a ghost she had survived. Jessica walked back up, found the scarf on the floor, and tied it around her wrist like a trophy. She looked at herself in the mirror, the fabric catching the morning light. Thank you for leaving a trace, she whispered. Now I know how close I am to being free. Downstairs, her laptop chimed, a new email from her attorney confirming the sale of their joint property was proceeding under her signature alone. She smiled, faint and satisfied. The stranger's perfume no longer filled the room. Now, it was the scent of closure. The phone rang once, then again, cutting through the hush of mid-morning. Jessica almost let it go to voicemail, but something in the number stopped her, a local Austin area code she didn't recognize. She hesitated, thumb hovering, then answered. Jessica Hale? The voice was soft, uncertain, the kind that tried to sound older than it was. Who's this? You don't know me. But I think we both know Mark. Jessica's pulse slowed, not sped. The stranger's perfume had finally found its voice. Go on. There was a shaky exhale on the other end. He told me you were separated. That the stroke changed you. That he was taking care of everything. I didn't know. Jessica walked to the window, sunlight cutting across her face in bright lines. Didn't know what? That you were still married. For a moment Jessica said nothing. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past, the sound like distant thunder. So you called to apologize? No, the girl said quickly. I called because he's missing. Jessica blinked. Missing? He left Cancun 2 days ago. He was supposed to land in Austin, but he never came home. His phone's off. His friends haven't seen him. I thought maybe you knew something. The words hung between them, heavy and impossible. Jessica turned from the window, heartbeat steady. If he's missing, you should call the police. I did. They said he isn't technically missing yet. His card stopped working, Anne. I found your number on an old invoice in his glove box. Jessica felt a bitter smile tug at her mouth. Of course you did. Please, the woman said, voice breaking. I just need to know he's okay. Jessica let the silence stretch. The only sound was the ticking wall clock, its rhythm matching her breath. Then she said, very quietly. He's fine. He always lands on his feet. Even when he's standing on someone else's chest. The line went still. Then a soft, guilty sob. Jessica almost felt sorry for her, almost. You're not the first person he's lied to, she said finally. But you might be the last. What do you mean? Jessica's eyes lifted to the photo on her dresser, the one of her and Mark on their wedding day, the one she hadn't thrown away yet. The glass caught the morning light, splitting her reflection in two. "I mean," she said, "that he's learning what it feels like to disappear." She hung up before the girl could answer. For a long moment she stood there, phone still in her hand, pulse echoing in her ears. Then she set it down carefully, as if returning a scalpel to its tray. She walked through the house, every step deliberate. The windows were open, curtains stirring with the breeze. On the kitchen counter, her laptop pinged with a new email, a travel alert from the airline. Passenger, Mark Hale. Status, no show. She stared at the screen until her reflection blurred into the glass. "So you ran," she whispered. "Good." She closed the laptop, locked it with her new password, and turned toward the door. The sunlight outside was blinding, pure. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was standing in his shadow. Whatever game Mark was playing, she was already 3 moves ahead. The morning headlines rolled across Jessica's phone while she drank her first coffee in weeks. Austin man reported missing after return flight no-show. The photo attached was old, Mark in a suit, smiling the kind of smile that used to fool everyone. She set the cup down slowly. Steam rose between her and the screen like a curtain. Police statements, airline confirmations, speculation in the comment threads, she read each one with the patience of a surgeon. The words were facts to everyone else, but to her they were echoes of a choice already made. Her inbox chimed. Detective Harris, missing person inquiry. Mrs. Hale, we're following up on your husband's travel records. Could we schedule a brief conversation? Jessica typed a reply she'd already rehearsed. Of course. I'm as surprised as you are. Please let me know what I can do to help. She hit send and closed the laptop. The house was silent again, except for the ceiling fan whispering in slow circles. That afternoon a knock came, 2 firm taps that echoed through the foyer. She opened the door to find a man in plain clothes, badge clipped to his belt, notebook in hand. Mrs. Hale? Detective Harris. Mind if I come in? Jessica stepped aside. Please. I've been expecting you. He looked around as he entered, taking in the immaculate order of the living room, new linens, clean counters, no trace of another life. You heard from your husband recently? Not since before my stroke, she said evenly. He was on vacation. He sent photos. Then nothing. You two were separated? No, she said, smiling faintly. Just reassessing. He scribbled something. We tracked his phone until he landed in Dallas. After that, it went dark. Jessica nodded. He always hated goodbyes. Harris studied her face. That must be difficult. It was, she said. But difficulty isn't fatal. For a moment neither spoke. The ceiling fan clicked once, twice. Then Harris closed his notebook. If he contacts you, call me directly. I will, she said. When he left, the house exhaled again. Jessica leaned against the door, eyes closed, heartbeat steady. She hadn't lied, she'd simply told the story in the tense that suited her best, the present. Later that night she stood on the porch, phone in hand. The neighborhood was quiet, street lamps glowing amber over wet pavement. She scrolled to her draft messages, opened the unsent text to Mark, learning to live without you. She read it once more, then deleted it. The screen went black, her reflection staring back, pale, calm, unburdened. Somewhere, someone was searching for a man who had spent his life running. She wasn't running anymore. Jessica looked up at the Texas night. The air smelled of rain and cedar. In the distance, thunder muttered, low, distant, promising. You wanted freedom, she whispered into the dark. You got it. The wind lifted her hair across her face. She didn't brush it away. The storm could come, she was ready to stand still this time. 2 days later the sky over Austin hung heavy with the promise of rain. Jessica had just finished her morning physio routine when another knock rattled the door, 3 short, decisive taps. Detective Harris stood on the porch again, hat damp, notebook tucked under his arm. Mrs. Hale, sorry to disturb you. I have a few follow-ups, if you don't mind. Jessica stepped aside. Of course. Coffee? He nodded, glancing around as she moved through the kitchen. The house was spotless, too spotless, he thought. Every surface gleamed, every picture frame seemed newly positioned. She poured 2 cups, hand steady. Sugar? Black's fine. He accepted the mug but didn't drink. We've confirmed your husband landed in Dallas. He rented a car there. It was found abandoned near Waco yesterday morning. Jessica's brow creased just enough to register surprise. Abandoned? Keys still in the ignition. Wallet in the glove box. No sign of struggle. She set her cup down carefully. Then maybe he finally decided to disappear. Do you think he would? Jessica met his eyes. He liked attention too much for that. But I suppose everyone has limits. Harris scribbled something. The pen scratching filled the quiet. You two had financial disagreements recently? She smiled faintly. That's public record, detective. So you did revoke his power of attorney? I did. He was careless with things that mattered. Harris studied her face. That's a cold decision for a woman fresh out of the hospital. Jessica leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice smooth as glass. A stroke makes you think differently about time. I decided to stop wasting mine. The detective nodded slowly. Fair enough. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small clear bag. Inside lay a pale blue silk thread. We found this in the car. Mean anything to you? Jessica stared at it, heartbeat steady. A thread? No. Looks like it came from a scarf. Maybe a woman's? She lifted her eyes. Detective, my husband collected strangers like souvenirs. I couldn't identify them all if I tried. He watched her for a long beat, then slipped the bag back into his pocket. We'll keep looking. If he contacts you, I'll call you directly, she finished. He stood. One more thing. There's a toll booth camera that picked him up near Temple the night he disappeared. He wasn't alone. The passenger's face is obscured. Jessica tilted her head. So you don't know who it was? Not yet. She smiled, small, controlled. Then you'll be back. Harris studied her another moment, then tipped his hat and left. The rain started moments after the door shut. Jessica stayed where she was, listening to the soft hiss against the windows. She touched the edge of the table where his cup had sat, a faint ring of condensation marked the wood. She walked to the sink, rinsed both mugs, lined them up perfectly on the rack. Her reflection in the window stared back, composed, unreadable. From upstairs came the faint chiming of her phone. A new voicemail. She climbed the stairs, slow but steady, and pressed play. Mrs. Hale, this is Detective Harris again. We're sending a team to search the property tomorrow. Routine procedure. Please don't be alarmed. Jessica deleted the message without replaying it. Then she crossed to the closet, opened the door, and looked at the empty hanger where the blue scarf had hung the day before. The scent of perfume lingered, faint and sweet, like a secret that refused to die. Let them search, she whispered. They'll only find what I want them to. By mid-morning the sky over Austin was the color of unpolished silver. 2 squad cars idled at the curb, engines murmuring, while a white van marked evidence parked halfway up the driveway. Jessica watched from the front window as 3 officers stepped out, Detective Harris behind them, coat collar turned against the wind. She dressed carefully, gray sweater, black slacks, hair loose, expression somewhere between concerned and cooperative. When she opened the door, the smell of rain met the faint trace of lilies from the hall vase. Good morning, Mrs. Hale, Harris said. We'll keep this as quick as possible. Take all the time you need, she replied. I want answers as much as you do. He nodded, gave a brief set of instructions, and the officers moved quietly through the house, one upstairs, one toward the garage, one to the back garden. Jessica stayed by the window, watching their reflections drift across the glass like restless ghosts. In the kitchen, the younger officer, Mendez, opened cabinets methodically. He paused over the trash bin. "Mind if I check inside?" Jessica smiled. "Of course not." He lifted the lid, sifted through nothing but coffee grounds and lemon peels. She'd emptied everything hours ago. "Neat house," he said. "Order makes the world less frightening," she answered. Upstairs, a drawer closed sharply. Harris's footsteps followed. "Your husband kept an office here?" She gestured down the hallway. "Second door on the right." "I haven't been in there since the hospital." Harris entered first. The blinds were half closed, the air stale with dust. He glanced at the desk, stacked invoices, a cracked photo frame face down, a single drawer locked. "Do you have the key?" Jessica shook her head. He always kept it with him. Harris slid a small tool from his pocket, jimmied the lock open. Inside, tax papers, an old passport, and a folded map of Central Texas with a red circle drawn near Waco. He laid it flat. "Any idea what this could be?" Jessica stepped closer, studying the circle. "No," she said softly. "But it looks lonely, doesn't it?" He looked up at her, trying to read whether the remark was poetic or confession. Her face gave nothing away. An hour later the team regrouped in the foyer. "No sign of disturbance, no personal effects missing," one officer reported. "We'll catalog what we found in the office," Harris said. Then, to Jessica, "You've kept this place immaculate." She smiled politely. "Disorder reminds me of hospitals." He nodded. "We'll be in touch." When the door shut and the engines faded, the silence that followed felt deeper than before. Jessica waited until she was certain they were gone, then walked upstairs. In the office she reopened the drawer, lifted the map, and traced the red circle with her finger. Beneath it, faint pencil marks shaped a smaller X, one she'd drawn months ago, marking the site of their lake house, the place she'd signed away quietly after his stroke. He must have copied it before he left. She folded the map again, slipped it into her sweater pocket, and stood by the window. The rain had eased, the world outside looked scrubbed clean. Her phone buzzed, a new message, untraceable number. "You're being watched. Don't make this harder." She stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it. Through the glass, a crow landed on the mailbox, feathers glistening. It tilted its head, as if listening. "So am I," she whispered. Then she turned off the lights, walked back to the living room, and lit a single candle on the mantel. The flame wavered, reflected in the window beside her face, one light for the living, one for the lost. The search was over for them. For her, it had only just begun. By late afternoon the storm had cleared, leaving the Texas sky scrubbed pale and endless. Jessica drove west, the folded map on the passenger seat, its red circle like a heartbeat against the paper. The road wound through cedar groves and open pastureland until the asphalt narrowed to gravel and the lake came into view. It was smaller than she remembered. The old pier sagged at one end, reeds whispering against the shore. She parked the car, killed the engine, and listened to the silence settle back into place. The lake house sat on a rise of land, shutters half closed, paint peeling in the sun. They'd bought it years ago when love had still meant escape. Mark had called it their retreat. To her, it had always felt like a waiting room. She walked up the steps, key in hand. The door opened on the first try. Inside smelled of wood and dust. A pair of folding chairs leaned against the wall, an old radio on the counter, a half-empty bottle of bourbon on the table. She set her purse down, crossed to the window, and watched the light dance on the water. Every corner of the room was a ghost. The fireplace where they'd once burned letters. The corner where he'd promised change. The floorboards that still carried the outline of his boots. Jessica opened the drawer by the sink and found an envelope addressed in his handwriting. "Jess. If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it back. I thought I could fix what I broke. I thought disappearing might save us both. If they come asking, tell them you never knew. M. She read it twice, lips tightening. There was no apology in the words, only a man's attempt at rewriting guilt into heroism. She folded the letter back into the envelope, slid it under the radio, and exhaled. Outside, the lake shimmered silver blue, perfect and uncaring. Then her phone buzzed, an unknown number again. Mrs. Hale, a male voice said. This is Detective Harris. We traced Mark's rental car GPS. It pinged near your lake property yesterday. Are you there now? Jessica looked out the window, eyes on the empty dock. I am, she said. Don't touch anything. We're on our way. The line clicked dead. She turned slowly toward the door. The impulse to flee whispered through her legs, but she stayed still. Running would mean she'd lost control of the story. And stories were the only thing she had left to command. She took one final walk through the cabin. In the bedroom, dust covered the dresser except for a single clean rectangle where something had once rested. A photograph, maybe, now gone. By the fireplace she noticed footprints in the ash, small, not his. Someone else had been here recently. Jessica stepped outside, the wind lifting strands of her hair. The lake rippled, reflecting her like a mirror cracking outward. You wanted to vanish, she said softly. You almost did. In the distance, sirens began to rise, thin, urgent, approaching fast. She folded the map, tucked it into her coat pocket, and walked down the steps toward the water. By the time the sirens reached the drive, she was standing at the edge of the dock, eyes on the horizon, calm as the surface of the lake. The sirens faded to a hush of tires on gravel. Detective Harris stepped out first, raincoat flaring in the lake wind, followed by two deputies carrying evidence cases. Jessica stayed on the dock, hands folded in front of her, eyes on the water. Mrs. Hale, Harris called, I need you to step back, please. She obeyed, calm as ever, heels clicking on wet boards. The sound reminded her of metronome beats in a hospital, steady, inevitable. We traced your husband's rental to this location, Harris said. Mind telling me why you're here? Jessica looked past him toward the cabin. Because he left me a letter, she said. Because someone had to come close the door. Harris motioned to the divers. We'll start with the shoreline. The men moved methodically, boots sinking into the mud. One uncoiled a yellow line, another slipped beneath the surface with a muffled splash. The lake swallowed them whole. Jessica stood very still. The breeze carried the smell of rain and engine oil. Behind her, camera shutters clicked like insects. 20 minutes passed. When the diver resurfaced, his voice was tight. Sir, you'll want to see this. They pulled a tarp to shore, shape hidden beneath a web of lakeweed and silt. Harris crouched, lifted the edge, and froze. Not a body. A briefcase. He unlatched it carefully. Inside were stacks of documents sealed in plastic, each stamped with bank insignias Jessica knew too well. His offshore accounts. Proof of everything he drained before the stroke. Harris straightened, rain dripping from his sleeve. You knew about these? Jessica's eyes didn't flinch. Not all of them. But I knew he was hiding something. Any idea why he'd sink it instead of destroying it? She tilted her head. Maybe he thought the lake kept secrets. He studied her for a beat. And you just happened to come here today. She smiled faintly. Sometimes guilt draws you back to the scene of your mistakes, detective. Even when the mistake isn't yours. He couldn't read her tone, regret or warning. We'll need to take you back to Austin for a formal statement. Of course. He turned to the deputies. Bag everything. As they worked, Jessica drifted toward the pier's edge again. The surface of the water trembled where the divers had broken it, ripples reached her shoes and dissolved. She imagined the briefcase sinking months ago, his hands shoving it down into the dark, believing depth meant safety. But water remembers. It gives back what people try to bury. Harris's radio crackled. Detective, we found something else, under the pier. Jessica's breath caught just once, a reflex she tamed before it showed. 2 officers lifted a smaller object from the shallows, a metal box, corroded but intact. Harris flipped the latch. Inside lay a wristwatch, still ticking faintly despite the rust, and a wedding band. Her wedding band. The one she'd thrown into the river the night of his stroke. Harris looked up slowly. Care to explain this? Jessica met his gaze. Her voice was almost kind. Maybe the lake keeps everything that doesn't want to be found. He studied her a long moment, then snapped the box shut. We're done for today. As the cars pulled away, she remained by the water. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of wet earth and iron. She knelt, touched the surface with her fingertips, and whispered. Thank you. The lake rippled once, as if answering. Behind her, thunder rolled again, low and patient. The evidence was theirs now. The truth was still hers. The room smelled of paper and coffee gone cold. A single strip of fluorescent light hummed overhead. Jessica sat across from Detective Harris, hands folded, expression soft enough to be mistaken for calm. Between them lay a folder, the briefcase inventory, photographs of the lake, her husband's letter sealed in plastic. Harris flipped a page, pen poised. For the record, Mrs. Hale, you claim the first time you've been to that property since your husband's stroke was yesterday? Yes. Yet your name remains on the deed, and we found recent tire tracks matching your vehicle. Jessica's eyes flicked toward the wall clock. I sold the property months ago. Maybe the new owner drives the same brand. He didn't look up. You didn't transfer it legally. It's still yours. A pause. The clock ticked twice. Then I suppose I should thank you for reminding me, she said. He closed the folder, leaned back. I've been doing this job long enough to recognize when someone's staging serenity. It's a good act. Maybe I'm just tired, she said quietly. Maybe grief looks different on everyone. He studied her. You don't strike me as grieving. Jessica met his gaze. Detective, you saw what was in that briefcase. Offshore accounts. Missing funds. Tell me again which of us should look guilty. For the first time, he smiled faintly. You're sharp. But guilt has layers. So does survival, she answered. He stood, walked to the mirror that wasn't a mirror, spoke softly into the hidden mic. When he turned back, he set down a small envelope. This came from forensics. You should see it. She opened it. Inside was a photograph, grainy, taken from the tollbooth camera near Temple. 2 silhouettes in the car, Mark driving, the passenger's face turned toward the window. A scarf around her wrist. That's not me, Jessica said. No. We ran enhancement. It's a match to a woman named Erin Latham. She called you last week. Jessica's expression didn't change. She said he was missing. And now she is. No trace after Tuesday night. The words landed like stones dropped into still water. Jessica's breath stayed even, but a pulse flickered at her throat. You think I had something to do with that? I think coincidence makes bad company. She leaned forward, voice low. You're looking in the wrong direction, detective. He built this disappearance long before either of us caught up to him. He scribbled a note. So you're saying he's alive? Jessica sat back. I'm saying men like him never really die. They just change names. Minutes stretched. The fluorescent light buzzed. Finally, Harris stood, gathering the folder. We'll need to keep you available. Jessica smiled faintly. I'm not going anywhere. He nodded, but his eyes lingered on her a beat too long, as if trying to see through the calm. When he left, she exhaled softly, touched the ring-shaped scar on her finger, and allowed herself one small tremor of relief. She wasn't free, not yet, but she was still directing the narrative. In the reflection of the darkened window, she saw her own face doubled back at her. 2 versions of the same woman, the one they thought they were questioning, and the one who already knew the ending. she whispered to the glass. Almost over. The city lights blurred through the rain as Jessica rode home in the back of a cab. The day's questions still echoed, but she'd learned to let noise slide off her like water. The driver's radio murmured old country ballads, each note seemed to dissolve into the wet glass. She watched her reflection in the window, the faint outline of a woman who had buried one life and stepped quietly into another. The cab stopped outside her house. She paid, stepped into the drizzle, and stood for a moment under the porch light. It felt strange coming back here after the station. The house looked cleaner, emptier, like it had been waiting for her. Inside, she hung her coat, lit a single lamp, and walked straight to the study. The detective's folder sat where she'd left it. She flipped it open, thumb tracing the photograph of the lake, the briefcase, the missing woman. Each image a chapter she'd already written. In the drawer she kept a small voice recorder. She pressed play. Mark's voice filled the room, calm, rehearsed, the same recording he'd made years ago to dictate business notes. But behind the corporate jargon came a different sentence, one she'd never noticed before. If this gets out, we're both done. Keep it safe. You know where. Jessica smiled. She did know. Because she'd hidden it herself. She crossed the room to the bookshelf, slid a row of novels aside, and pressed a panel in the back. It clicked open to reveal a slim black envelope. Inside, a memory card. Evidence of videos, transfers, all of it pointing to Mark's accounts and the partners he'd protected. It was her insurance, the reason she could sit through every interrogation without flinching. She placed the envelope in her purse, zipped it shut, and whispered to the empty room. You taught me to disappear, Mark. I just learned to do it better. Hours later, the phone rang again. Unknown number. She answered. Silence on the other end. Then, a familiar female voice, soft, shaking. Jessica? It's Aaron. Jessica froze. They said you were missing. I was. But not anymore. We need to talk about what he did. About what you did. The line went dead. Jessica stood there, heartbeat slow but heavy. For the first time in weeks, she felt the air tighten around her ribs. The game she thought was finished had just shifted again. She looked out the window. Across the street, a car idled under the lamplight, wipers swiping in rhythm. A silhouette in the driver's seat. Watching. Her phone buzzed, new message, no name. You buried the wrong thing. She stared at the words until they blurred, then exhaled, a half-laugh slipping through. Then I guess I'll have to dig it up. She walked to the mirror by the door, tied the pale blue scarf around her wrist again, and looked herself dead in the eye. Her final act, she whispered, is never really final. Outside, thunder rumbled over the hills, and somewhere near the lake a single light blinked on. She thought she'd buried the past. The past just sent her a message.